Welcome, everybody. We'll give you, everybody's rolling in super fast, so we'll give you a second here. Murph, I think this is going to be our last to our list of all of you guys. I think this is our last August webinar. It's going to be September. Crazy, crazy.
Time is flying by.
Busy time of year for everybody who's on the webinar and you and I. Crazy, crazy. All right. So as you guys are rolling in, we got a few questions for you before we start doing intros. We'll do intros, but we've had a few webinars in the last week plus around financial aid. So we're delighted to see so many people registered. So we just want to get a feel for who's here tonight. So the first question, and we ask this quite often, is what is the class of your graduating class for your child in high school? So are they graduating this, are they going to be, are they seniors, 26? Okay, you guys got it. 26, 27s, a lot of 26s. Oh, there's a 28 and a 30. Awesome. All right. All right. So we have a good little mixture there, Murph. A lot of 26s,
A
but
lot of
we've got a smattering. Looks like we got twins there, like
yeah.
me. All right. Two sets of twins. Awesome. Okay. Other question I have for you is just give us a thumbs up or thumbs down emoji if you came to boot camp last week, the financial one. It was on Wednesday. So yeah, give us a thumbs up. I see one. Don't be shy. Oh, you're doing it in the chat.
In the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, you can do it in the chat or just shoot it up. Okay, so a bunch of you are, but not everybody. Okay. All right. Yeah, no worries. It's not bad if you weren't on it. We're just trying to see who we got here. Okay, it's almost 50-50. Okay. All right, great, great. Because we just want to make sure that we are hitting you with all the stuff that you need to hear. So a lot of you weren't on there. That's great. Okay. So last question, I promise, and then we're gonna get into this. Thumbs up or thumbs down if you've set up a MyCAP account. You would have gotten an email from us today that you can set it up for free. Okay, so a
Okay,
lot of
excellent.
thumbs up. Very love it.
A lot
Look
of
at all
thumbs
these.
up
I
on
don't
that
see
one.
any
Wow.
downs. Oh, there's
Yeah.
one. Okay. Well, if you haven't, hey Murph, can you just pop that in the
Yep.
chat? So a lot of you have your MyCap. That is great because we're going to be doing a lot of teaching in there, and we're also going to be doing slides. So that's wonderful. Um, so Murph, if you put the link in the chat, if you haven't set it up, there's a free version. It's super easy. If you click on the link or just it's mycap.collegeapro.com,
Yep.
you set up use an email, create a password. Now you get a code, that usual sort of thing. Very few onboarding, and there's nothing. It's very simple, just about your family. There's no financial stuff that you'd have to go look up or anything. So go ahead and do that because I was talking to one of our colleagues today, Murph, and my colleague, Kathy Portally, who does all of our social media. She's awesome. So follow us on Instagram or whatever. I think it's called following, right?
Yeah.
Because she does an amazing job. I mean, I don't know where she comes up with all this stuff, but she said a lot of people, when she put the question in there, like, do you guys know which colleges are going to give your kids the most money, the most financial aid and scholarships, which is our title for tonight? A lot of people were saying, no, we don't know that. And so we're going to teach you about how this works tonight. And then MyCap is the integral part of it because that's the software. Murph and I can tell you all about this is how it works, but we can't tell you specifically about your family unless we're meeting with you one on one. And in the software, you can get more detail. So it's great that a lot of you are in there. Um, those of you that aren't, please do this. It's free. You can put up to 3 colleges. If you decide you want the premium, it's $4.99 a month. No contract, so you can use it when you feel like you've gotten all that you need. you can you can just stop the payments. It's just super super easy. So strongly recommend you do that. So we didn't even introduce ourselves here. So I am Peg Keough. So if you are on boot camp, you know me. If you've been on boot camp, you've been on stuff. So you know my buddy here, Kevin Murphy. He's one of our pros on our team of experts that we've developed here at CAP. And so basically, very short introduction. I have twins. I always like to highlight that as my best credential that I've been through this twice, right? So I get it as a parent and I get it as being a professional. And it really, really doesn't have to be as stressful as it is. So if you set up your MyCap account and you follow along with us and learn, and then you leverage us when you need us, right? For in whatever way works. So we're going to talk about at the end how you can talk to us one-on-one for free. Okay. So stay on. We're going to talk about that because we want to be able to point out what kind of family you are and what your next steps should be. Because if you're saying, yeah, I agree with those people on Instagram that Kathy asked, I'm not sure, which is don't beat yourself up about it. It's very confusing, this process. That's why CAP even exists, to be honest. If it was easy to navigate this, you wouldn't need us, right? So um I'm the director of education here. Murphy, you want to say hi for a minute? I have everybody know, I came from the financial industry and here I am. All right.
Yeah, so you already said it, but I'm one of the experts here at College Aid Pro, and yeah, I came from the financial services industry, fell in love with just college financial aid, and well, here we are. Um,
Yeah.
Done
I
it
mean, this
countless times,
literally is what gets us out of bed, helping. Murph
literally.
has helped thousands of families. He just joined CAP. I don't know. It's been over a year, right?
Wait, so August will be basically a year. Yeah, yeah, there we go.
If we weren't remote, we could have a big party, but
Yeah,
we're remote, so bummer.
we're all
But
over.
anyways, okay, so let's kick this off and let's talk about tee up financial aid. Oh, and a couple housekeeping items because we always get these questions. We are recording this. You will get the recording. And I saw somebody said, oh, they didn't get the boot camp recordings. Just write in to support@collegeaidpro.com, but check your spam folder. And if you have Gmail, check your promotions folder and then move it to the inbox. Because then it should always end up in your inbox. But if you don't see it, don't be shy. Just write us and say, I registered for boot camp. I didn't get it. And Eileen is our amazing, she runs our support desk. She's awesome. She'll respond very quickly and you'll have your recordings. The other piece of housekeeping, and I will tell the person who just posted a question in the chat, please copy that. All the questions should go in the Q&A, and you can be anonymous in the Q&A. So you can click the box. A lot of people don't, but if you want to, you can click the box. And if as we're presenting, if Murph and I see a question that we think, really we should talk about it with the whole group, we will. So we'll bring it out. Otherwise, we'll be doing our best when we're not talking to be in there answering your questions as best we can. So I'll put them all in the Q&A. All right.
And
So yeah, go ahead,
I
Murph.
thought that was one thing we said we were going to ask too, which is put your most pressing question in the Q&A, and I can essentially get to work on this.
Yeah, yeah. And if we see the same question over and over, let's just throw it out, Murph, and we'll talk through it and get into details.
Yeah.
We're trying to kind of mix it up tonight a little. I know we have some people that weren't on boot camp, so we want to make sure we cover stuff so everybody's getting support tonight. So that's our goal. All right, so let me kick this off and just talk about the key thing here is financial aid. The key takeaway here, and this is one of these counterintuitive things in this space that all the colleges are discounting. A big thing that we're trying to do with at CAP is bring transparency to this discounting process because if every school did it the same, again, it would be easy to navigate this, and they don't. They do it in different ways, in different amounts, and like I have twins. I think there's two parents in here that have twins. It was different for Shannon and Brennan, my two kids. So even the same family, the same financials, the packages, the discounts, or the lack of discounts for my family were different between my two kids, even at some of the same schools that they both got into. And it's all around understanding this. So if you understand this and you can navigate it for the different schools your child's looking at, you can truly have an idea around affordability, which, trust me, from a parent who's been through this, it will save you sleepless nights before they leave and while they're in school and after, because you got to pay loans back basically. So, three ways these discounts are happening: need based grants and merit scholarships. That's the free stuff. Okay. The grants can come from your state, potentially, the federal government. Most of them come from the colleges. We call them institutional grants. You have to have need. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. If you don't have needs, you're not going to get any need-based grants. The merit-based scholarships also, the biggest source is the colleges. There's also private scholarships, which make up about 5% of the money that helps kids pay for college. So not a big piece of that pie, right? Um, these scholarships are huge to capitalize on, especially if you don't have need, and they're almost always guaranteed for all 4 years. So it's massive because I'm a financial planner by background. I think I mentioned that. That's like how I tick. And I tell every parent I've worked with for well over a decade, this is a 4 year expense and hopefully only four. And that's why merit is so awesome, because when you're looking at each year and what is your funding gap each year, which is something we do in our software year by year, but you want to look at it for all 4 years, you can count on that merit as a line item for all 4 years. So that's huge. Need based aid, it's going to vary. If you get a promotion or you lose your job, things will vary. But you want to capitalize on those two buckets, because unlike the third bucket, you don't need to repay it and you don't need to work for it. So, work study, your child gets a job, gets a paycheck. Loans, we all know what loans are, right? There's different forms of student loans from different entities, but you got to pay them back. You got to pay the piper eventually, right? So, this cost of attendance, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, it truly is irrelevant, which is nice because these schools are getting so expensive. $100,000, $80,000 a year. I won't go on a diatribe about if I think these prices are worth it. That's for another time, but they're irrelevant if you understand how the schools are discounting. Okay, so let's take a minute and just talk about need-based aid. Super simple equation: cost of attendance minus student aid index slash EFC. They both, the EFC is the old term, and we've left it in here because some colleges are not adopting the new terminology from the FAFSA that was updated a couple years ago. But that's what gets generated from a financial aid form, and that gives the college an idea of where you fall. It doesn't mean that's what you're going to pay. That's why the government changed the expected family contribution name, because that tells you, well, that's what I can expect to contribute. And that's not the case quite often. So just keep that in mind. The difference is your need. So I know a lot of you, and you gave us the thumbs up, you've got your MyCAP account set up and you hopefully have gone into your profile, which I'll show you in a minute, and you have that all dialed in. You're looking at your two SAIs. Okay. So, that's what they're going to go off of. And there's a range in one of them that I'll talk about in a minute. So, I'm not going to go total weeds here, but assets and income make up this student aid index. So assets, non-retirement assets only. So 401k, 403b, when in doubt, find out. If you're not sure if it's a retirement account, find out from somebody who knows. Those are not included in your net worth of investments when you're asked that. Everything else is on the table. So that means checking and savings and bonds and stocks, and if you have CDs, anything like that is on the table, as well as 529. So that's a college savings account. So if you've been fortunate enough, you have enough extra money to sock away in a college savings account for your child, and you're the owner as the parent, that's key. Your child's a beneficiary, but you're the owner, then it's an asset of yours. It is considered a non-retirement asset. If grandma is the owner or anybody outside of your household, that balance in that account, doesn't matter how big, it's not included on that form under the parent's assets. And it's definitely not included for the student, because a 529 account, the owner still owns that money. It's not a gift to that minor like the UGMAs and UTMAs are, that are the third bullet down on the second bullet over there on the left. That is an irrevocable gift. If you have one of those, jot down that that's a student asset, and you really should talk to us, because there's strategies around that, but there's a lot of things, there's tax consequences, there's a lot of things to look at. The reason why I'm stressing so hard about the 529s is, one, we want you to do it correctly, but two, it's very punitive if you increase assets for your child that aren't theirs, because student assets are looked at 20 or 25%, hopefully not more. Whereas parents are up to about 5.64%, little shy of 6%. So obviously huge difference. They expect the kids to pretty much almost clean out all the money they have. So don't make that mistake. Last thing on assets, real estate. So, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute in the software, but if you own your home, I'm going to get into that in the software. Some schools are going to look at that equity, most schools are not. But any other real estate you have vacant land, you have a vacation home, whatever it is, that's on the table. And when I say equity, I mean market value minus a mortgage, a home equity line of credit, anything like that that you've drawn on. You want to get that equity as low as possible if it's a school that looks at that equity. And I'm going to show you in a minute that there are a bunch of schools that do. They look at it as an asset. Assets are literally the day you hit submit if you want to be that accurate. So you have time. I know a lot of you, these forms are going to be live to everybody October 1. You have time to put some strategies into place if you're sitting on a chunk of money. Again, those strategies are very family specific and unique, so that's something we can talk to you about. All right, now income is very different. It's not current, it's prior year, which is a 2-year look back. This has been in place since President Obama did it, so it's been a while. So you can see up here, all you class of 2024 parents, it's going to be all about last year when you're doing it. So if you don't have your taxes done, get them done. I know I was just talking to mom the other day. Oh, he always extends me. I'm like, no, you tell him now that you have a child in college, no more extensions. You get him all his stuff that he or she needs, and get that done ASAP, because it will get moved into the FAFSA. And if you need to appeal, we want all of our ducks in a row. And that's for every year. 2025, get it done as early as you can next year. Okay. So parental income is usually the biggest driver, right? And if you make a nice living, trust me, being a planner for all these years, that's a good thing. It might sting a little once you're looking at financial aid, but overall, count your blessings, right? And you can't do much about it. If you had a great year in 2024, or you just make a nice living, awesome. Pat yourself on the back. If for some reason things aren't looking as good, that's when appeal comes into play. And Murph's going to tease that right at the end. That's a whole webinar in and of itself. Okay. Last but not least, on the assets and income, because I didn't say this, it's students and parents. But you can see on the income side that there's a parent protection allowance. It's not super generous, but it's there. But you can see the income protection allowance on here for kids. It's quite high. So my son worked all through the school year, worked full time in the summer, and he didn't come near that amount. I mean, this was a few years ago. But if you have a child that, made $10,000, don't worry, because at the FAFSA only schools, that's going to be a wash, because it's under that allowance of 11,510. Otherwise, that can move the needle because it's assessed at 50%, the student income. All right, so those are the pieces for need-based aid. So now let's look at, remember that middle bucket. Some of you, I'm sure, are looking at your account and you're seeing those SAIs that we're going to look at in a minute, and they're kind of big. Murph and I have worked with hundreds of families like that, but you either can't afford to spend 70, 80, $90,000 a year, which is totally understandable, Or honestly, you don't want to, even if you can afford it. You want to get these discounts. You want to find a great academic, personal, and financial fit school for your child. Like that's the perfect trifecta. That's really what you want to do, and you want to be looking at them, all at the same time. So let's talk about that middle bucket for a minute, and then we're going to actually go in and I'm going to show you this with a family, right? So these merit scholarships, few things to talk about. I already said how much I love them. They're almost always offered for 4 years. Student maintains a certain GPA. That's the main thing, and it's not a 4.0. One thing I'm going to drive home, and Murph's going to talk about the financial aid forms in a few minutes. That's the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Every year I have parents, and I'm sure Murph has this too. They're like, I don't want to do these forms. My neighbor didn't do them. I'm getting nothing. It's a pain in the butt. I have to share my stuff. Well, you better be really, really careful if you're going to make that decision, because there are schools, and I'll throw out NYU as one of them, a really popular school in this country, that if you don't fill out those forms, you're not eligible for merit aid. And it doesn't make sense, because I told you, merit aid has nothing, Bill Gates's kids can get merit aid. It has nothing to do with your ability to pay, but it is what it is. If that's what their policy is, and there's no uniform list that Murph and I can put a link in the chat to, we've been asking this forever in the professional community, and people will share, and then another person will go, no, they changed their policy. Like, the colleges can always change, so keep that in mind. That's number one. Number two, there are a group of schools, over 100, that do not give merit scholarships. All these schools have what we like to call their business plan. They're all discounting, like I told you, but they don't do it the same way. So they're targeting certain students. They give need-based aid in a certain way, and some of them are just like, we're not doing merit aid. We don't need to do it. Those schools, most of the time, give excellent need-based aid, but you need to know that, because if you have a student, your child got a uh, has a 4.0 unweighted GPA, 35 ACT, 1550 SAT. That's lovely. And that's going to be helpful if they're applying to the Ivy Leagues in Stanford and the NESCACs, which are like Williams and Bowdoin and Amherst. That's great, but it's not going to get your child 5-figure per year discounts, which is what the merit scholarship schools do. Literally 25, 30,000 a year discounts. Huge. And remember, it's for 4 years. So keep that in mind. You want to be applying to these schools with your eyes wide open. Doesn't mean you should take these schools off your list, but you want to make sure you can afford it, one, or two, start talking to your child about maybe you're going to focus on private scholarships, because that's the only game in town if you're not eligible for need-based aid. So these are all these strategies you got to think about. Last but not least, and we do this with our families that we work with on a comprehensive basis, is we are very forward thinking. So we know that a part of this process is appeals that Murph's going to talk about, and having competing offers for merit aid and sometimes need-based aid. It just depends, but merit aid very often is huge. So if we have a student, if Murph's working with a student that, is super interested in BU, like loves BU, I love the city campus, the T goes right through it, it's awesome. And they went and saw Northeastern, I don't like that. It's got a different feel, right? We would most likely say apply to both, because we're thinking later on, senior year, if you get into both and say at Northeastern, which they give merit, it's competitive, BU gives merit, it's competitive, you can play them off each other. You can do this with the Ivies. You can do this with not with merit, but with need-based aid. So this competing offer thing is huge. And so I'm just planting that seed that there's a lot of stuff you should be thinking about when you're building the list. And for you 2026 parents, your kids should be almost honed in on their list. Our admissions experts are saying, it's your JP Schmidt, one of, when I was presenting, he said, you're late. Like, if you haven't started, so you got to be on that. You got to be building this list. So that's the pieces with merit. So let me now share my screen. And once I'm in here, Murph, please chime in with any of your thoughts. Don't hesitate to interrupt. And then let me know if there's any questions, we want to address en masse here. So now we're in MyCAP. This is your dashboard. So the main thing that I want to point out, and I need to, you know what? You know what? This is perfect. I'm going to show you the profile because let me go in here. So this is, um, oh, you know what? This is, you know what, Murph? Throw out a couple questions because, just talk through a couple questions because this cached something. I want to log into
No worries
my,
at all.
yeah, I'm going to
All
log in.
right. So a lot of questions about merit scholarships and what are we talking about? We're talking about money from the colleges. We're not talking about private scholarships or from other sources. So I just wanted to clarify that. And in terms of let me just actually pick a question. Um, how does the FAFSA work for divorced families?
Oh,
We're
well, you're
gonna
gonna hit that in a minute. I'll let you hit that when you got the
we're gonna
slide up,
dive
because
into
then
that
you
later.
guys will have a visual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put that was something had cached, so I wanted to show you guys this account. So one thing I want to show you first of all, and this is key, up here where it says 100%, that means my profile is 100% filled out. This is your planning tool, right? This is for you to use to see what different schools are going to do and to search. So make sure you use that, right? Leverage it. You can go in here and you can edit all this information. You want to make sure this information is correct, because if it's not, then we can't calculate your student aid indexes accurately, right? So make sure that's all dialed in. So now that we're here, let's focus on, I just talked about the student aid indexes. So there's your federal one. Those are the schools that only require the FAFSA. If every school was like that, it would be a lot more transparent, because one student aid index is calculated for all those schools. And that's what it is for my sample family. So basically rounding up, it's 17,000 a year. Now you notice this institutional SAI, that's the one that comes off of the CSS profile. And Murph's going to talk about this in a few minutes, but the reason why there's a range is that, remember when I talked about assets and I said real estate, most schools don't look at the home you live in, but there is this group of schools, about 250, that require the CSS profile that do. And we've got, you don't have to worry about all the specifics of this. The takeaway here is 9,000 is a school that doesn't look at your home equity. And you see, it's a massive difference for my sample family, over 38,000, because this family has home equity. And that's the school, like a Boston college, that literally will look at your forms and say, yeah, that's a checking account for that the parents can use to pay for college. You might not agree with that, so that's where you get to understand how these colleges are going to look at your family for affordability. And honestly, you get to make decisions about where you're going to apply. I mean, I did it all day with my kids. If a school wasn't coming to the table, is do I really want to spend all that money at that school? So you don't like that. I've had parents that are like, I'm not touching my home equity. You are not going there. Well, then you should know that ahead of time and then don't apply if that's how you feel, because why waste the money sending scores and apps and supplemental essays and all that fun stuff? Okay. So here's the two SAI. So that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's not all of it. It's just what you have to know. So once you know that, then we're able to help show you net costs for schools you put in. So if you have the premium version, you can put in unlimited schools. If you just set up your free version now, you can put in 3. But like I said, it's $4.99 a month. Super, super inexpensive. We've done that intentionally. So when I click on my family's school list, you can see right here the net costs at all these schools. And then I'm going to show you where I can actually, this is BU. And if you don't know all the logos, that's understandable. If you click on the school, then we're into what we call the deep dive. And we have all this information for you about BU, and then specifically about your expected net cost, which you see up here. It's less than half of that $94,000. Remember at the beginning, I said that that cost of attendance is irrelevant. Here's a perfect example. We tell you the mid 50% of the student profile at BU. this is important, because if you're trying to see if your child might get in, if your child's above all of these, better chance of getting in. If they have merit, better chance of getting merit. We give you the acceptance rate. Okay, then we get deep into the financials. Here's your 4-year view. So remember, this is a 4-year cost, not a 1 year. We show you, and we inflate cost of attendance because it's going to go up, and then we show you what this family has need-based aid. That's going to be your financial aid. That's your net cost over 4 years. This is a key thing to pay attention to. If you're a family that has kind of high SAIs and you're counting on merit, well, 8% of the kids at BU get merit. The average award is nice, but 8% of the kids get it, right? So if you're a betting person, odds are, unless your child is way over all the averages, they might not get it. So this is all this important stuff to understand. So let me let me look at, let me look at Chapman because I want to show you. So Chapman, all the same sort of information. If you click on merit scholarships, all the scholarships for all these schools are here at your fingertips. You click, it takes you to the website. You can read about it, and we will project a scholarship as long as it's likely or automatic. But that's okay. Say it's not. Say it's competitive. We're not going to click it, but you go in here and look at them. You'll know what they are. And then you'll be able to see too, like here with Chapman, you can look and see, well, if your child got a 1300 SAT, but you can see, oh, they have another one that if they go up 60 points, that's a huge jump in merit money. And this is per year, everyone, right? So use this as a planning tool. Then we'll tell you about affordability. We have our definitions here at CAP because we want you to make these decisions with affordability in mind. This is your 4-year cost. We make you answer budget. Well, we don't make you, we can't make you, but we hope you answer the budget questions because this is the total cost. This is this family's net cost. Look at their budget coming in. This is the estimated funding gap. This is vital. I'm telling you, parent to parent, understand this, and you can compare. You have all these your kids are deciding on schools they're going to apply to. They're starting to do Common App and essays. Look at those differences. And if all the schools are 81,000, be prepared for that as far as borrowing, and understand that this is over 4 years, right? So that's about 20,000 a year. Last thing I want to go over, and then I'm going to turn it over to Murph to get into some details about the financial aid forms because they're coming momentarily, literally they're almost here. What I want to do is go back and show you how you, especially 27s, 28s, 29s, how you can use this to actually find schools as you're trying to build a list. Because a lot, like all those parents on Instagram, they don't know which schools. Well, this is the answer to that question. So let's go. There's tons of filters, and I'm only going to pick a couple, but you can get in here and look at all of these. So let's say, okay, my child wants to go to a 4-year school. Let's look at enrollment size. So like probably went to a small high school, want to stick to under 5,000. And then what about distance? But I want to go away from home, but not too far, right? And then let's go down to major. But as you can see, there's many other filters within these main categories. So let's just put like bio, okay? And we scroll down and say, show me all those schools. So all these schools come up, which is fine. And you might be thinking, oh, well, that's great, Peg. But there's other searches out there, and you're 100% right. But what you can do now, once you know those SAIs and you know what matters to you as a family, you can say, you know what? We do have need at a lot of schools. So I want to see the schools where my child's going to get the most financial aid as far as those grants we talked about. And a couple of these first schools, they're great. These are the ones that don't give merit. They're great at meeting need. You can see the net cost here. Very nice net cost for this family. But maybe your child can't get in. It's a wild card to get into those schools for any student. But as you scroll down, there's different schools with different levels of selectivity. So you can add these schools at any time. The other popular search or sort by although you can see there's a bunch, is merit. So if you're like, I want to see where my child's going to get the most merit, or if you're the student and you're in here, just click merit scholarships. These are the merit scholarships we're projecting for the student, not just schools that have good merit. And then you can scroll down, you can do the deep dive and see exactly, let's look at Wheaton and say, okay, what does Wheaton look like? We're projecting, you could do the math and see this, but you see it's a Wheaton College academic scholarship. You can see the specs on it, the grades, the test scores, yada yada. So what's really awesome about this is you truly are building a list with affordability in mind. And it just, there's a lot of other pieces in here. We take you through the whole journey through the end of literally dropping your kid off in college. But that's what I want to show you now, because it's really bringing together what I talked about before. So Murph, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to stop yapping here and turn it over to you.
Oh, you're not yapping. Everyone loves it.
All
We're getting a
right.
lot of great questions, guys. So we really appreciate it. I'm doing my best. We're at around roughly 50.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome, Murph.
But we're still getting questions in the chat. So anyone who's got a question that hasn't been answered that's in the chat, please drop it in the Q&A, copy and paste. But okay, we actually just had a question in the chat, or sorry, the Q&A about this. When the form's open, when do you file and fill out and apply for financial aid? So we'll start off with the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. The link on the screen is essentially where you would go and apply. Now, it will go live October 1st of this year. And we talked before about this, but the prior year is the base year. So 2026 high school grads, well, 24 is the base year. 27, 25 is the base year, and so on. Keep that in mind too, because you have to continuously apply for financial aid while your child's in college. So 24 might be the base year, but if your student's graduating in graduating high school in 2026, they'll use the 24, 25, 26, and 27 tax return. So it's just good to keep in mind. Now, in terms of a divorced or separated situation, only one parent actually puts their information on the FAFSA. And it is the parent who provides the most financial support. And there's usually a really big planning opportunity around this to figure out, all right, how do we make this work so we can maximize aid? The custodial parent is typically the parent who provides the most financial support. But again, there's room here to try and plan and figure out what's best for your family, depending on your circumstances. Now, if you haven't already, regardless if you have a 28 grad or a 26 high school grad, go and create a FAFSA account. And you'd go to studentaid.gov, create an account for yourself, and then also create an account for your student. Save that username, save that password, save the challenge questions and the backup code. But I think that's it on the FAFSA.
Okay.
Now, for the CSS profile, this is a form from College Board, and not every college requires it, right? So it is something that's essentially in addition to the FAFSA. This goes live October 1st, and roughly 250 schools actually use the CSS profile. Now, if a college is using the CSS profile, it's typically going to be a school that's giving a lot of their own money, mostly, very expensive or competitive private schools, but some public schools, like UNC Chapel Hill and University of Michigan, also use the CSS profile. On the CSS profile, they ask you questions about your home because they treat home equity the same as a checking account. Now, Peg showed before in the software how we're already kind of building that into the numbers and we're factoring that in, but every college that uses home equity may treat it slightly different. So it's really important to keep in mind, and it's important to keep that in mind too when building a school list. Now, in a divorced or separated situation, this is not like the FAFSA, right? Many of the colleges will also require the non-custodial parent to complete their own CSS profile. It's called a non-custodial profile. And this is something that, yes, there's a waiver, right? But to get it waived, it's usually pretty serious. It's going to be no contact, no financial support, and then also circumstances with abuse. So not super easy if a college requires it, and it's always their decision if they're going to require that non-custodial parent information or not. Now, on the CSS profile, there's tons of questions for business owners, like the year your business started, and they also ask for questions from the tax return and evaluation as well. There's usually some room here, right? For business owners, there's more questions, more room for mistake, but also more room to do this the right way and essentially qualify for a lot of money based on how you value your business, and so forth. Now, the form itself, there's way more questions than the FAFSA, way more invasive. And they are going to ask questions like, how much do you want to contribute to college? Everything they're asking you essentially can be used against you. It's stuff that the colleges will look at, will see, and will factor in when determining your aid. So it's really important to get this right and only provide essentially the bare minimum. Anything you want to add here on the CSS profile, Peg?
It will, somebody just asked if you would repeat about the tax year. So I think what they're referencing is basically you want to remember it's prior year. So if you have a class of 20, you have a senior right now in high school, you're going to be reporting on the first year, which we like to call the base year, is 24. Then for sophomore year is 25, 26, and 27. So whatever, I know we have class of 2027 parents. Your first year you're reporting on is this year. So what you want to think of is when is your child going to school, even if they're in college? What's the year when they're starting that fall? Subtract 2. That's the year you're reporting on. So that should answer that. And I'm sure other people have that question because I know we're so used to this, but
I
um, it's like it's our it's our second language, right? But
Yeah.
not for everybody else. So no,
There was
one thing, yeah, go ahead, Murph.
No, I was gonna say there's a question here too. I said that yes, you can go in now and create your federal student aid account, right? You don't have to wait until October 1st to create the account. You have to wait until October 1st if your student's going to be a high school senior to file the FAFSA. It doesn't open until then, but you can go and create an account.
Yeah. And, people are saying, do we have to submit both of them? As Murph will say it again, because I know it's a lot. If the school requires the CSS profile, like he said, it's not in lieu of the FAFSA, it's in addition to it. And a few people have said, hey, how do we know about this or that? Let me just show you all of this stuff is right in the software. Where's my page? It's just showing up weird. I'll go back to my home. Yeah, let me just share this real quick because now that we've talked about forms, and then I'll let Murph talk about appeals here. Somebody said, well, if we want to just focus on CSS schools, basically, one, you can do a search for CSS schools in the advanced search, which is really powerful. But any of these schools that you do a deep dive, we're going to tell you, if you go under financial, we're going to tell you the SAI basis. So if it says federal, that means it's FAFSA only. If it says institutional, like BU, that means that it's CSS, but it's both. You've got to submit both together. You've got to pay attention to deadlines. So all of that stuff is in here. And I will be fully transparent. That advanced search I showed, that is the premium version. So you will have to pay $4.99. And by the way, if you're on free and reduced lunch, if that's too much, we don't want to leave anybody behind. All you do is write support@collegeaidpro.com. And it's the honor system. We're not going to check you. We're going to trust that you're being honest, but we're happy to get you, we don't want that to be an impediment for anybody because we know how confusing and hard this process is. So last thing I want to show before I turn it back over to Murph, since he did such a good job on all the forms, is let me show you. We have a whole section on this, right? So yours truly here goes through the FAFSA and the CSS, right? So I will walk through. I like this picture better, so I'm going to go back here. So it's there's people have a lot of stress. I know, and sometimes I think people tell themselves stories of how bad the CSS is bad. It's a pain in the butt. The FAFSA, they're doing better. But the cool thing over here is you don't. It's all right here. These schools, as long as you say you're applying, we're going to tell you. All the schools need the FAFSA. Bunch of these don't need the CSS. You know, if there's a divorce situation, how you handle, there's just, it's all right here. We have this all built in for you. And again, up here, this is the journey you're on. You see appeal up here, that's what Murph's about to talk about next. We know where you're going, we know what's stressful for families. So, do yourself just a giant favor and just get in there so that it can give you some peace of mind, honestly. All right, so that's the two forms. I will share one thing about the FAFSA. This is the third year of the new FAFSA. So, in case your child goes to school and they're like, oh, you can start your FAFSA. The FAFSA is live to everybody October 1, like Murph said, but they did start beta testing. They did beta 1 in August, which is what they're still in. So that's a select group that had to apply. But beta 2 is going to be a bigger group. So that, don't quote me, but I think it's like September 2nd or something. It's right at the beginning of September. So if your child gets to school and they're participating in beta 2, you might be able to start early. And there's no negative to starting. You do need to get that FSA ID and password to start. We will do webinars about best practice and how to do this. The Department of Ed has made a couple really cool updates based on where people were having issues. So tune in when we share that so that you don't make mistakes or you don't start here and then you cause more stress for yourself, basically. So, but just, yeah, October 1 is what you can remember. Even if you can do it in September, that we have some pros on our experts team that are actually at financial aid offices right now. I just talked to Melissa Stevenson, our podcast. So definitely check out our podcast. Shout out to that. She's like at a state school in Connecticut. And I've asked her point blank, like, when these come in on the FAFSA, are you going to turn them around? And she said, no, no. They have their timelines and deadlines, but it's peace of mind for you to get things done, right? So anything, I know I love getting things off my list. I think all of us do. So, all right, Murph, I'm gonna let you wrap it up here with appeals.
All right. So appeals. Now, appeals, this is typically going to happen spring of your student's senior year. At this point, you'll have all of the offers from the colleges, you'll have all the financial aid awards, and that's when you can actually do this. And that's usually the best time to do it. Now, you have to remember that this isn't necessarily like a negotiation in the sense of you're haggling the college for additional aid. You're coming up with valid and really strong reasons as to why you deserve additional aid. We had someone write in the chat before that 2024 income was an anomaly. It was a very, very good year, but that's not their normal income. That's a great reason that has to be addressed on appeal. But you also have to kind of share a story, right? At the end of the day, financial aid counselors are people, and they're individually reading well, sometimes it'll go in front of a committee, but reading your actual appeal letter, your statement. So it has to be a nice story. It has to make them want to help you. If you're thinking about using leverage to compete in college, a better offer, can't just say it, right? You can't just say, hey, colleges X, Y, and Z gave us more money. They are going to want evidence. They're going to want evidence for pretty much whatever you address on appeal. So that's important to keep in mind too, because if you're bringing it up on appeal, there's a chance they might ask you for proof. Now, there are many circumstances where an expense is not part of what the colleges have seen thus far, right? Think things like elder care, medical expenses. That won't necessarily be listed on your tax return. Maybe it's not on the CSS profile. And because of that, it's something that's great that can be addressed on appeal with the colleges. We've seen this. I think this year was a great example of how being persistent and literally appealing more than once is a great strategy, but you also have to demonstrate interest. If they're going to be giving you more money, they want to make sure that it's going to be for a student who's going to come to the college. Because they do truly, and have limited funding in some cases with grants and so forth. Now, there are plenty of appeals where it makes sense for the student to lead the charge, right? So let's think, scholarships, Office of Admissions, they want to just hear from the student. The student can also be involved on the financial side, if even if there is a change in income or whatnot. But typically, the parent's going to be the person who's explaining those circumstances, explaining the drop in income, explaining the change, whatever it is. And also that enrollment deposit, you want to have all of this done by that date, right? So if you're paying a deposit on May 1st, you want to try and be done appealing all the responses and so forth by May 1st. Now, I don't want to make it sound like it's impossible to appeal after. I think in the last month, I've done like 10 appeals and it's still possible, but it really does kind of change things a little bit. And it could be unfavorable. So you definitely want to try and get the appeal done, submitted, everything before you place the enrollment deposit. I will say one thing too, if a student applies early decision and you get the response in December, you're going to be appealing earlier. You're going to be appealing in December. But for most students applying regular decision, applying early action, all the offers are going to come in March. And at that point, that's when you would appeal.
And somebody's asking, can you appeal an ED offer?
Yeah, 100%. And also, it's important to keep in mind too, if your student applies ED, do your homework. You go on MyCAP, you go on the college's net price calculator, and the numbers are just really different. It's okay to tell the college no, right? If you've done your homework, you've done your part, and you truly you can't make the numbers work, that's okay. But yes, you can appeal. Any other
Yeah, and I,
questions come
I
up?
always say with ED that you really, I mean, you should do your homework no matter
Yeah.
what, but you really want to do your homework. And as Murph said, you can get out of it, but you absolutely can appeal. Most of the ED schools that have early decision, a lot of them don't have merit aid. They fall in that bucket of schools that just don't do it that we talked about. So I've personally done it several times very successfully for need-based aid. If sometimes schools will under award, meaning they say they meet a certain amount of need and they don't do it, right? For that student, the one example I had with a family, they shortchanged him per their stats about 18,000 a year. And so we got on and I said to the parents, what what do you need to make this work for you? And they said, we need another 10,000 a year. And I said, that's what we're going to ask for. We're not going to ask for the max. We're going to ask for that. And the school didn't even blink. They were like, sure, there you go. Right. They under awarded the student because a lot of kids are just overjoyed to get in. Right. And then they might be like, well, we're not messing with this. I'm so excited I got in when, as Murph said, sometimes it's two appeals and knock on wood, never seen. I think they'd be in legal hot water. They can't rescind admission because you appeal to financial aid, right? They just can't. It's
Yeah.
part of the process. The worst thing that can happen is they just say, we're sorry, we can't do it. I was at a conference a couple of years ago presenting to a group of they were independent counselors and school counselors. And this woman raised her hand and stood up and she said, I used to work in a financial aid office at XYZ school. She said, we would just give $1,000 to any student that made the effort to appeal, right? Even if they couldn't meet their ask and do whatever, they would just give them $1,000. I'm not saying every school does that, but my point is, and our point is, this is a part of the process, just like submitting financial aid forms for a lot of families. So just realize that. And your presenter, not me tonight, but your other presenter is like one of our superstars of this, I'll tell you. He has done extremely well in getting money on appeals for our families. So
I wish we still had that slide. I do want to say one thing though. Everyone always asks, should we still file the FAFSA and CSS profile if we don't qualify for aid? To your point, how there's that one school that just gave $1,000 to everyone, they will sometimes look to see if you submitted your financial aid forms. I had plenty of families, I'll give you a specific school, LMU in California, who didn't submit financial aid forms, not against our advice, to be clear. They came to us after the fact. LMU I saw them give money to every family that appealed. But those particular families who didn't submit their financial aid forms, they just flat out said no. And that was the reason that they gave. So you always want to keep that in mind too. And it's usually just better for so many reasons to just fill out the FAFSA and fill out the CSS profile.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Another thing with schools, and then we're going to wrap up here, is some schools, if you don't submit that form freshman year, they think what you're telling them is our life is not going to change, our income's going to stay the same, everything's going to be great. They will not let you come back and apply sophomore year, junior year. I had a family, they used up all their money. Then they found me, their second child, their oldest was going to be a senior. They're like, we're tapped out for her. We need to submit forms. Their son was going to the same university. So they were going to get two revenues from this family. I called them. I'm like, come on, give this family. The parents didn't know. Nope. They could not submit and she would have gotten money. The parents would have gotten money for that older child, but because they did not submit freshman year, they told that college, take us off the list for ever needing need-based aid. So that's a risk. I said that before COVID, and then, none of us anticipated, something so bad as that happening. But life is full of change. So there's a lot of reasons to submit the form. So, guys, we did our best. I know there's still some questions in the Q&A, but and Murph answered a lot more than I did. He's a rock star in there.
Did my
But
best.
we want to respect your time. We got about 3 minutes left. We want to wrap up. The key thing here, and I say this all the time, so if you've heard me, you're like, yeah, I know, Peg. But continue your process, okay? Don't drift. What I say, drift. It's so easy. There's so much going on in all of our lives. Stay connected with us, and our call to action for you tonight, super easy. So if you want to, here, I'll pull up the page, and you can put the link in the chat, Murph, and then you can
Yep.
talk through. Let me share. Just as I said earlier, we are happy to chat with you for a free 15-minute call to basically help you. Well, I'm going to let Murph, he's better at verbalizing exactly. And he's one of the main people. You have a great chance of talking with him. We have a few other people as well. But go ahead and just describe what you're going to be chatting about, Murph.
We have to add that slide back. And one of the things that we're really good at doing during the free consultations is basically looking at your information. You do have to fill out a MyCAP account, but looking at your information and just figuring out what's the best approach, right? Best based on your student aid index, based on the numbers, based on the GP, everything that we're seeing, we're really good at that. And that's one of the things that we promise every family is to essentially look at that and give you our thoughts on how to approach it. Now, in addition to that, we'll try and figure out where you're at, right? Can you benefit from additional help, right? Are you a DIY family? What's the best approach for you? And that's what we cover. It's 15 minutes. It's quick. Sometimes we will go over the 15 minutes without a doubt. There's definitely some circumstances too where probably need more than even a half an hour, but we do our best to cover everything we possibly can in that short period of time. That is again why we do ask that you have a MyCap account prepared for it. But yeah, that's the
Yeah,
call.
we can't help you with next steps or help you to see what kind of family you are. And if you just say,
Out.
oh, well, I made this, like that's not good enough because we need to bring it all together and, with the assets and all the allowances, and that's what our software does. So
Yep.
it's really important to take those, like, to fill in your profile. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to be, pretty close. And that just will help Murph or whoever you're chatting with. So if you
Absolutely.
go to the link that he put in the chat and you click schedule here, um, it'll take you right to a page that looks like this, and you'll see the availability and you can sign up and you can grab a time with one of our experts. So highly recommend you do that. And
And
just yeah, go ahead, Murph.
I was just gonna say, sorry, not to jump in, but like even if you have a 2028 student or 2029, again, we can look at these numbers. We'll be able to figure out like, do you qualify for financial aid? Is the better approach merit scholarships? Is another approach public honors colleges? What is the best approach? So even if you think you're early, you're not. And for the families who have 2026 graduates, please try and get on our calendar within the next few days. I know that you do have to book by midnight, but also please try and schedule within the next week. You're literally up against about 30 to 60 days before pretty much all of this should be done.
Yeah,
Um,
financial aid forms, as well as
yeah,
if your child's applying like early action to college, the applications, all of it. Yeah. So, and I know some of you probably have kids that have been in school for a while, so are well into their, because we didn't ask for you guys. We hit you with enough questions this morning, so we didn't. I mean, the
this
tonight we
morning.
did. Yeah, this morning. I guess I need to call it a night, Murph. I think it's the morning. So I hope this, our hope is that this was hugely beneficial. You learned. Oh, thank you. I love the emojis. It's awesome. And stay with us. We're here. I know some parents, love to be ahead of the game. Just get, as Murph said, you're not, if you have a 27, if you have a 28 child, it's going to help you so much to talk with us and get the lay of the land. It'll cut down on a lot of stress. All right, everybody, have a wonderful evening. Have a lovely holiday weekend. You too, Murph. I'm
Yes,
sure I'll be seeing you before the
I'm,
weekend hits, but.
I'm sure. But yes, we've got a holiday weekend here. So,
All
but
right, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.
all right, bye bye.